Today we are going to rerush a frame that has unique features to it. One of the features is the style in the beginning is that there's 3 strands that are covered over to this point, and from that point on it's the normal weaving style. So that's one thing. Another is that the front corners are wrapped 3 ways, this way, and that way. The back corner is wrapped. I call it a corner, but it's round. That's wrapped. So what we need to do is find out how they did that and be able to duplicate that. So the first thing that I always do with a seat like this is I take digital photographs of everything. The sides, the corners, the angles. That helps me go back to it later if I've forgotten something important. I also like to mark it between where this weaving starts and this corner wrap is, so when I take it apart I know where the previous person chose to do that. So I go along and I mark it. You can use a pencil or a Sharpie or anything that's going to mark the wood in there so you can see it. And the same on the front edge. Between this strand and this strand I'm going to mark it. And over here you see there's more strands before the marking. And that's just so that when I have all this torn out, I know where to go with my starting wraps of the corners. Okay, I have them all marked now. Another thing that I like to do is I like to put a T right on top in the front. You could put an F if you want, but that's so once all the material's out and you start flipping the frame around, you might lose track what was the top and what was the bottom. Now what I want to do next is carefully cut out some of the material. I'm going to cut this strip here without trying to cut the corner. And I'm going to do the same, pulling away from the edge here. And the reason I'm doing this way is so I can see how they wrapped it underneath there. Now when you pull that away, I can see that they just went around like this. And they went from my pencil mark to my other pencil mark. And you can make sure your pencil mark is there. I'm going to continue to do the same on the front, so I can see how that was done. That's a little bit different method on the front. Now if I pull that away and pull this away, I can see that this was wrapped completely over top of these two. So what I want to do at this point is take this one off and see how they did those two. So I'm going to carefully cut this off. And remove it. And that's going to give me an idea how the first 2 wraps were done. It looks like this one was done first, and then they just turned their piece and went that way for a couple of wraps. Okay, I'm going to clean the rest of the seat out, and then we'll show you how to start wrapping the corners. We also need to mark where this pattern changes. You'll see there's 3 strands, 3 strands, 3 strands. That was done for a while, and so I'm going to mark where the transition is, which is right there. And I'm going to mark it on the other side also. We'll need that later when we start our weaving process. Now I do want to mention that this particular seat is pre-twisted natural rush. The customer opted to go with fiber rush and will be putting in a larger size. This is probably 5/32, and we're going to be putting in 6/32, which is the normal size that is usually done in rush weaving. We now have cleaned the entire frame out. You can see that my T is visible, and you can see why I did that, because it looks the same on both sides. The bottom side will tend to have holes if it was attached to a chair frame, but it doesn't always. You can see my pencil marks, one there in the back, so we know where to weave. You can see why that was important, because you'd be clueless at that point. Now we're going to get our first pieces of rush and wrap the back corner. I like to soak the rush in water for a little while to soften it up. Not too long, just a couple of minutes. Take it out and shake off the excess. Get yourself a short piece of rush, just one that'll be long enough to wrap the corner. And what I'm going to do is attach it to the inner rail so that it'll lay up right against that pencil mark right there. And I'm going to use a cable staple gun and attach that right there. And then I'm going to start wrapping it, putting the edge of the rush right on the pencil mark. I'm going to hold it tight, make sure it doesn't overlap itself on the top or the bottom, and I'm going to wrap the entire corner all the way to the other pencil mark. Now that got me right up to that pencil mark. So now I'm going to turn it over, and I'm just going to attach it on the bottom here. Trim off the excess. Now we have our first back corner wrapped. Now we'll start wrapping a front corner. Okay, we've wrapped that corner in the back. I also went over here and wrapped the other back corner using the same method. Now I'm going to come up here and wrap the front corner. This is a two-step process. I've already wrapped this side. You can see there's one set of wrappings underneath and then an outer wrap. So that's what we're going to do over here. I'm going to take my piece, you can see my pencil mark, and I'm going to lay it underneath and attach it underneath here with my staple gun. And then I'm going to pull it up over there. I'm going to turn it this way so it's easier for me to work with. And I'm going to bring it underneath and just wrap all the way along here. And I'm keeping the strands parallel on the top and on the bottom. There's nothing overlapping each other. And it kind of comes in on a funny angle, but that's the way the chair was, so that's the way we're duplicating it. Now that that side is full, I'm going to keep that same strand and turn it, and I'm going to do this side. And that's going to take 3 wraps to get to there. And then I'm going to attach this piece on the bottom. Sometimes it takes a couple to hold it. Now we have the beginnings of this side wrapped. Now we have to add this piece. I've taken a piece and folded it in half, and what I do is I make a loop and I just pull this through the loop, and that's going to hold the piece without needing any staples or tacks. And what I'm going to do is manipulate it. It takes a little bit of adjusting, and I want to get this loop so when I pull it tight, it won't be near the top, but it'll be more near the bottom where it won't be seen. And there, we've got that. Now I'm going to take this piece and wrap it on this side. I'm just going to keep going around. And you can see I can fit one more in there to fill that corner in real nicely. And that I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to attach that on the bottom. Okay, we have that one wrapped and attached on the bottom. Now we're going to take this one and do the same thing going the other direction. Just keep going around. Looks like I could fit one more in there, but instead of doing that, I'm just going to untwist it a little bit to cover the corner rather than trying to squeeze another one in. And I'm going to flip it over and attach this with a staple. Trim it off. We now have all four corners wrapped, and we're ready to start the weaving process. We're now ready to start weaving the seat. We want to make sure that the gap, the distance between here and here, is the same or close. And there we have 10.5 inches, and in the front we have 10.5 inches, so it's perfectly square. So we're ready to start weaving the seat. Your chair may require a couple of filler ins in the front corner like normal rushing does. Just depends on the shape of your frame and where these all aligned. I have a coil that I'm going to work with. I've soaked it in water. I'm going to attach it once to the inside left rail with my staple gun. Just a comment about the staple gun that I use. It is a cable staple gun. You can see that it's rounded there. It's a special T25, and that's the one I use for rush. Now to get our pattern, that we have to do the pattern up to these pencil marks. This is kind of tricky, but we're going to go over the front rail and over the side just like a normal rush seat would do. We're going to come up in the middle just like a normal and over that one. But instead of coming over the front rail, to make our pattern, we're going to repeat this step 3 times. Okay, now we've come 3 times. Now I can bring my coil over the front and back up. And this might be a little confusing. If you're an advanced caner, you probably can understand. Now I'm going to go back and tighten it up. So I'm going to pull this tight, have it go right along the edge there. And I'm going to bring it up so it's parallel with those. And that's kind of a little bit of a precarious corner, but if you work it, you can get it to stay there. And then I'm going to take the other side of it and pull it tight across and go right there. Now remember, we're not coming across here, we're going back. So I'm going to go back over here, pull it tight, make sure it's parallel. Go back over here, and we're going to do that for all 3 times that we wrapped it. Now we're back over here, and that's our 3 strands there. So now I'm going to come up and go across, and it should be parallel right down to there. Now at that point, I'm going to clamp it just to hold it in place, and I'm going to continue on around the back in the normal rushing pattern. I'm going to release the clamp, pick up the tension, and this is going to go right there. So it's going to come straight back right to there. You're going to go underneath and you're going to come across right to there. Same thing on this side. It's going to fill right in nicely right there. It's going to come across the back to there, and it's going to come across the front. Now you may not be able to do what I did, 3 at a time there. You might get confused. You might just have to go 1 at a time and tighten it and clamp it until you can get the pattern established. Now I'm going to show you how I normally do this. I'm going to do the same pattern again. There's 1 time over there. There's 2. There's 3. So now I'm going to come over the front and up. And this is where I stopped the first time, but this time I'm going to continue and wrap my back corner, this back corner. And believe it or not, that is not a mess. It's all going to work out. So I'm going to take the clamp off and go back to tightening this up. This is going to come up and go over there. You have to work the corner to make sure everything stays together. And I'm going to go over here, tighten it up, come back. I'm doing this at the normal speed that I work. You may not be able to do this, or you might be able to. Okay, there's 3 that way. And I want to keep the gaps pushed up as best I can right there. Now I can take it and go back and do this back corner. And if you have confidence that you've wrapped it all correctly, it will all come out. And you'll be back here ready to clamp it. Now you can see our pattern starting. We're going over 3, we're going over 3, the same on this side, and we're going to do this till we get up to that pencil mark. So I'm going to go ahead and continue doing that, and we'll pick up the tutorial when I get there. Okay, I've woven it up to the pencil marks, you can see there, and while I'm weaving I had to add a piece, so here's a knot where I added a piece. I also have been hitting it with the hammer and the wedge to keep it parallel, using a wedge like this and a hammer. If you're not familiar with how to add a piece and hit it with a hammer, those topics are covered in the other video on rushing a ladder back seat. This seat, as I've mentioned, is for advanced weavers, so I'm making assumptions that you do know some of the methods of seat weaving. Now that we've finished this pattern up to the pencil line, we're going to start weaving the traditional rush method, which is up through the middle, over the left rail, up and over the right rail, directly over the front rail, and the back rail, the other back rail, and then I'm going to go back and tighten them up. I'm going to remove the clamp, make sure that's tight, go over there. The advantage of having a rush frame in my lap is that I can just turn the frame real easily to whatever angles fit. Me being either right-handed or you may be left-handed. Now I'm going to show you one more time of that, just to show you that it's the same pattern repeated till we get to the middle of the chair. Okay, we're going to continue that same pattern until we get up to the point where we need to add cardboard. I have continued weaving. You can see how the pattern is starting to take shape. At this stage, I have put the triangles of cardboard in to fill the areas where there's a void. I got it on all four sides. I also always put cardboard on the bottom so that all the voids are filled. And I just wanted to make the statement that this seat, I am making an assumption that you are an experienced rush weaver, so I'm not going into great detail on the standard rush procedures, such as tapping the edges to keep your gap the same there, cutting the triangles and putting those in. I assume that you are familiar with doing those procedures. If you're not, please go back and look at the video for how to put a rush seat in a ladder back chair. Okay, I've continued weaving and the sides are filled in, completely filled in, nice and level and parallel. Now I'm going to start doing figure 8 front to back and finish that out like any normal rush chair. Okay, now we have completed the entire frame. You can see that it's finished up and it has the style to matches the chair that came out, the seat that came out, and the corners are wrapped just like the original, and the back corners are wrapped just like the original. Once again, if you need more instructions on basic rush seat weaving, go back to the video how to rush a ladder back chair. That goes into much greater detail about adding pieces, keeping things parallel, things like that. This is an advanced weave. And we are complete.